All right. I believe this means we are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sorts and sizes and persuasions. Welcome to another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, also known as SomeGadgetGuy, the SGG of this horribly named podcast series. And the QA, of course, stands for question and answers. I like to make this an interactive conversation, get our tech week started off right. Coming at you an hour early this week because we've just got tech news galore. We've got reveals. We've got not long term. We've got multiple days of use on different products. We've just got so much going on. And I'm actually going to have to cap this show right at 2 hours because I've got another briefing that I need to tackle right after this. It's just a bunch. There's a lot going on. We're talking about a lot of stuff. I don't know if anyone caught it, but I guess I have to give a big shout out, some props to LG for giving me a good lead in. We're minutes out of the LG Wing announcement, so we're definitely going to be spending some time talking about that. I've got some screen grabs so we can hopefully see some better photos of the LG Wing in action. And yeah, just so much going on. Tech news, tech reviews, gadgets, gizmos. It's gonna be pretty. I think this is gonna be a good show. Hold on, let me get a drink of water. I think it's already making me nervous. Over the last week, I've done roughly 9 or 10 hours of talking, so I'm really hoping my voice holds out for this podcast. But yeah, Dave Burns, it's gonna be a crazy week for technology in the tech business. Walt Samarista definitely getting the wing. Again, we've got some. We're gonna have the gadget block. I still have some news that we're gonna cover up front. Oh, and I still need to pull up housekeeping. I'm grossly unprepared. So why don't we jump right in? First of all, hope you had a lovely weekend. Hope you and the family are doing well. It still looks like the apocalypse here on the West Coast. It's actually holding up a couple videos because it just looks real bad, like Blade Runner 2049, real bad. But we'll have some cool stuff to try and get through it. So there you go. I just feel bad because I know my family and I, we're all going a bit stir crazy because we can't go out and play and take long walks like we used to. Let me get this out of the way here. Blue Malicious, housekeeping in 9 minutes. Aditya Inel, housekeeping in 8. So let's see if I can just chew through this. This has been a busy week leading up to this week. This week is going to be a busy week, and next week is going to be a really busy week too. So let's screen share here. Let's knock out some housekeeping. Everything that we're going to be talking about this week, all of the links, all of the housekeeping, everything will be available on the show notes on SomeGadgetGuy.com if you want to catch the individual articles that we're talking about. I want to start off with the first video I put out last week is called Goodbye iPhone XS, 2 years and $1,000 later. I'm wanting to do more of these postmortems. So we get to the end of like using a phone, what our experiences were, how it lived up or didn't live up to expectations, and especially in this realm of $1,000 plus smartphones, right? So an iPhone XS at $999 over 2 years. What did it do? How was it supported? What was the experience like? So I put together a video there as I'm getting ready to send it off and sell it and hopefully chip away at my credit card bill for getting a Surface Duo. Next up, something we'll talk about a little bit in the gadget block. I don't have a ton of controversial hot takes, but I did put together a top 5 new features in Android 11. It's been really nice, especially for those of us in Android land. When you're playing with a Pixel, just how sweet it is. A new version of Android comes out, and you can jump right on it and play with new features. And Android 11, I think, is going to be an interesting refinement year. I don't think anyone's really, blowing up hot new features. This is not a radical departure for how we use a smartphone. But there are a couple nice little tweaks, some quality of life improvements that I think are going to be really interesting as they start hitting other phones. But of course, if you're on a Pixel, you get to play with them now. This was just a silly one. I think once a week I need to put in a video that just screws with the YouTube algorithm. Like, what is his channel about? because I had to revisit this company. This is a Brino. Brino makes these professional construction grade time lapse cameras, and that's not really my wheelhouse, right? This camera is above my pay grade. If you want to set up a camera for like a construction time lapse project and you want it to be able to run for like 2 months and be able to capture 5-minute increments, this is the kind of camera you would use. So it is far and away above what I would ever need for a time lapse solution. So I had to play with it, and it was hilarious. I actually screwed up my first major time-lapse video on it because I didn't do the calculation right on my intervals for how much I wanted to speed up time. So I lost like a whole week trying to set that up so I could use it. And then, of course, this was Surface Duo week last week. The official reviews went out. Tech reviewers across the board pretty much panned it. And then as soon as it started getting into other people's hands, we've been seeing a different commentary. People that are that actually bought the phone, using the phone, and liking it a lot more. We'll definitely be sharing some 3 or 4 days of use thoughts on Surface Duo in the Gadget blog. But one of the reasons why I did so much talking last week, going back in screen share, too much stuff on my desktop. Microsoft Surface Duo setup live stream with guys who actually like dual screen phones. So I had the jokers Sam and Matt from Across the Pondcast, which I'm currently wearing their merch shirt right now, and we spent like 2 hours just kind of chatting out our very first impressions, taking it out of the box, how terrible, how awful Microsoft's packing and shipping is. You buy a $1,400 phone, you would expect it to arrive in a nice box, but Microsoft subverted our expectations there. But thankfully the phone actually arrived intact and it wasn't damaged. So Sam and Matt, we took some time to really set it up. And I think it's funny, like we actually tried to do things on the phone while setting it up that tech reviewers didn't bother to try owning the phone throughout the embargo period. So even things like, what is it like when you plug it into an external monitor, is something I haven't seen on a mainstream tech review, but it's a Surface, so you'd think that maybe someone would be interested in using that kind of functionality. And then on the very first day, having it less than 24 hours, I wanted to see what we could really do with it, because we hear all this like, oh, the Surface, it's a last year's chipset, it's underpowered. So I shot, edited, and rendered a 4K vlog on the Duo, and it was fine. So you can see, like the product of actually trying to shoot, edit, and render 4K video from this camera. And yeah, the camera's pretty rough. I mean, like in the grand scheme of things, it's a really good selfie camera and probably not the most competitive rear camera, but we'll talk about that more. If you've got questions in the gadget block, we'll chat out, because I've been using the Duo pretty hard over the last couple days just to try and catch up and then get prepped for TK and I are going to be doing a phone challenge between the Note 20 and the Surface Duo. So I'm digging in pretty deep. I already have all my numbers for the benchmarks. Maybe we can spoil some of that too. Might it happen? Is there a Z Fold 2 versus Duo video in the pipeline? Probably not. Not the biggest fan of the Fold, and one of the reasons why I want to focus on the Note is closer in price. So, if we're talking that $1,300 to $1,400 price tag territory, and I'm a big fan of going back to a stylus. So I really wanted to focus on productivity hardware, not entertainment consumption hardware. And the Fold, to me, is less a productivity device and more an entertainment and consumption device. Even though there's a lot of similarity in form factor and having more screen real estate, I don't feel the Surface rises to the occasion of being a good passive sit down and watch something kind of phone. I think it's more a pick up and use it and poke at it with a pen kind of phone. And if you have a Fold, you can like scratch that screen with a fingernail. So that's a different kind of solution. That's why TK and I are kind of focusing. We're gonna probably start kicking things off, not the end of this week, but the end of next week, I'm hoping. of doing a little kind of cross-channel collaboration and challenge between productivity phones. And of course, mixing in some LG, because it's just nice having more options with proper active pen stylus support. So it's going to be real good. Yes. Okay. So I'm just catching up. Have you used the Duo as an e-reader? Actually not yet. I have Amazon installed. Might it happen that stylus would have made the perfect note fold combination? I just don't think you can do stylus on folding screens right now because they're so fragile. So that's not as good. Why don't we go ahead and call that? There was additional housekeeping to talk about. I joined the crew, Matt and Sam, for Across the Pondcast, so you can catch that. I'm actually wearing, it's blocked by my microphone, so I'm wearing my Across the Pondcast shirt. Everything's mirrored, so you can see my name at the bottom of my shirt. That way I don't forget who I am. And then I also joined TK on his Saturday stream, where we had some additional conversation about the Duo and what it was like using this as a different version of a dual screen device. Lots of gadget commentary, lots of conversation. So, yes. I'm thinking at a mile a minute because, like I said, there's so much stuff going on, and I've got a lot of thoughts on the LG Wing. Let's chew through the news block. Let's see if I can really get through this quick, so that we can spend some time. Like, I took a lot of screenshots during that LG Wing product announcement, and I really want to talk about, again, complex things kind of ticking in the brain, but we still have some news. We have a little news to cover, and I want to start this off with this big coup. This is a huge press release that your tax dollars at work and a government agency that's really proud of themselves for stopping counterfeit goods from entering the country. I mean, they're just patting themselves on the back because they're protecting you, America, and the intellectual property of mega $2 trillion corporations. I'm, of course, talking about the Customs and Border Protection seizure of counterfeit Apple earbuds. They stopped a whole I mean, this is probably worth $400,000 worth of counterfeit AirPods. So this shipment came in, and man, Customs, they're on it. So here's the actual press release from the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. On August 31st, CPB officers seized 2,000 counterfeit Apple AirPod earbuds from Hong Kong destined for Nevada at an air cargo facility located at John F. Kennedy International Airport. If this merchandise were genuine, the manufacturer's suggested retail price would have been $398,000. And they showed these are the counterfeit AirPods. And they took some of them out of the box, and the person doing the hand modeling has terrible fingernails and awful fingers and just gouged up cuticles. They could really use a manicure. And boy, howdy, it's a good thing they've protected us. If you have any suspicion or information regarding suspected fraud or illegal trade, please report the trade violation to E-Allegations Online Trade Violations Reporting System, which just rolls right off the tongue. I'm actually amazed that I got that on the first try. This is hilarious because they're showing us OnePlus buds. This is their big seizure. They stopped a shipment of OnePlus earbuds from entering the country. It's in the OnePlus packaging, the OnePlus box, the OnePlus logo, but they look a little like AirPods. So, man, Customs jumped right on it. Just like, this is how pervasive marketing and media manipulation is. Your confirmation bias on all things Apple has reached government agency proportions. No, this is maybe another consideration, another factor when you are manufacturing something. Maybe don't go out of your way to try and replicate the design of an Apple product, because now we're getting to a point where government officials just can't tell. even though it's in a box with labels and branding of another company. They don't understand. They don't grok the mechanical differences of Apple versus competing products. So this would just be a friendly reminder. If I want to buy AirPods, I'll go and buy AirPods. I don't want to wear earbuds that look like Apple products if I'm not trying to buy Apple products. So I'm sure the OnePlus buds are fine. I haven't taken them for a test spin. I really like the bullets better, especially the neckband bullets. Those are my jam. I think those are really good. So there you go. Customs, man, keeping America safe. Good job. Good on you. Yeah, that was for Medici Anil. I believe the technical term is an oopsie. Yeah, I Blue Malicious, but Apple makes all the good products, Juan. Everything else just must be fake. Oh, and TK Bay backing me up. The bullets are a lot better. I mean, again, I don't know. The OnePlus buds are probably fine. I'm just not a big fan of open ear earbuds, and the bullets are techie cool, like especially how the magnet clasps and stuff. I just like neck bands better. All right, I can't get the images to fire up on this, but someone else predicted it's a major story, and it's something we're going to have to keep our eye on. It's a major headline, and now we need to follow up on it because this has huge ramifications for the processor and the GPU market, relationships with other manufacturers, other chip suppliers, Samsung with the Exynos, Qualcomm with the Snapdragon, whatever Google might be trying to do with custom silicon. Apple and ARM reference designs. And I, of course, am referencing, I pulled the Reuters feed because this is where I caught it first. NVIDIA to buy chip designer ARM for $40 billion as SoftBank exits. But none of the images on Reuters are showing up. I wonder if they're just getting hammered right now. NVIDIA Corp will buy UK-based chip designer ARM from Japan's SoftBank Group Corp for as much as $40 billion, the company said on Monday, in a deal to reshape the global semiconductor landscape. When you put out a phrase like in a deal set to reshape the global semiconductor landscape, it's amazing how that feels insufficient to properly describe how big a deal this is for NVIDIA to control this. The sale puts a vital supplier to Apple Inc. and others across the industry under the control of a single player and faces likely pushback from regulators and rivals to NVIDIA, the biggest U.S. chip company by market capitalization. Within hours of the announcement, critics questioned how ARM would maintain its open approach under U.S. ownership and at a time of friction with China. For SoftBank, the sale marks an early exit from ARM just 4 years after the group's $32 billion acquisition. Chief Executive Masayoshi Son has lionized the potential of ARM, but is slashing his stakes in major assets to raise cash. The move comes as SoftBank executives, frustrated at the group's share performance, have held early-stage talks about taking the Japanese technology group private, a source told Reuters. Those talks could gain momentum following the ARM sales. SoftBank's shares soared 10% in Tokyo. So this is big. NVIDIA, huge name for GPUs, obviously, especially in the consumer space. That's one of the things I think we're probably most familiar with. They just recently had their announcement about RTX 3080 and 3090. We talked about that last week on the podcast. I am a little torn on NVIDIA being the company to own ARM. Now, ARM chips are gonna be the future of, I think, most computing interaction, consumer grade computing interactions. We're looking at, huge power. Very powerful chips that are also very power efficient going into phones, tablets, mixed mode, multi-mode, tablet, laptop combinations. And then Apple is going to be using ARM instruction sets for their next gen of Apple Silicon, brand name TM trademark, copyright, intellectual property, whatever I need to say so that Apple won't sue me for just saying Apple Silicon. Putting that all together, because NVIDIA also makes a lot of money on AI development and machine learning hardware and putting big, powerful number crunching things into racks of servers. And ARM has actually been, I think, ARM design chips have actually been one of the tip of the spear, the bleeding edge of getting machine learning functionality into the hands of consumers, right? We're not seeing Intel and AMD pushing this as aggressively. These like custom nodes, these custom cores, all for this like neural, these neural cores. That hasn't actually been the biggest talking point in laptops and desktops. We've seen that much more aggressively showcased on mobile devices. And again, you pull up a camera and AI functionality sort of takes over all of the not just the exposure, but also what filters you should put on a shot, extra saturation, editing like vignetting, and then if you pick up an LG, they'll even like crop and recompose your photo for you all through AI code, looking at what you shot. It's kind of a crazy idea seeing NVIDIA lock up what will be the future of mobile and low power computing with big GPUs. And I wonder if this is also going to be NVIDIA's way of re-entering the mobile market. Because remember, they used to do the Tegra chipset that was in tablets. I think it made it to a few smartphones. We know like AMD wants to be a GPU supplier for mobile phones. If you have an Exynos chipset with an AMD GPU, that should be good competition against Qualcomm using CPU and GPU cores from Qualcomm. So this combination now moving forward, say like, oh, you can use a Mali, you can use, I forget what the other GPU core is. But yeah, at the same time, we've also got this custom NVIDIA GPU core, and here's a new ARM reference design where the two fit together really well. Walt Samarista, we could have ray tracing capable phones. The one-handed experience is really concerning on the RTX 3090 GPU. Like, it doesn't really fit in one hand. I'm really concerned about one-handed use now that I've held a phone like the Surface Duo, and an RTX 3090 is just not good for one thumb. Gabaletta is saying, give me a phone with an NVIDIA GPU. Just don't let NVIDIA be the one who owns the whole architecture. That's just it. If this deal goes through and they find a way around pushback from regulators, then yeah, I think NVIDIA is going to have a very strong market-focused approach to combining ARM reference designs with something that will satisfy NVIDIA shareholders. So, on the surface, that sounds cool. Don't get me wrong. NVIDIA designed mobile GPUs, I'm for it. It makes me a little anxious when NVIDIA, especially with NVIDIA's track record of playing fast and loose with regulatory guidelines that stand in the way of competition. Like, they can kind of create anti-competitive marketplaces for other competing solutions in whatever market that they walk into. That makes me a little concerned. So, I don't know. To me, 40 billion sounds like this huge number, and yet still doesn't sound like enough when this is literally the future of consumer electronics. That the organization responsible for guiding the development of these mobile chipsets, these mobile processors, 40 billion just doesn't sound like enough. Like, I don't know. It's strange in my brain because we're talking about, Apple has a $2 trillion valuation. Google is huge. Microsoft is huge. Like, you just think of ARM. ARM is the company what makes all of this stuff. And then other companies build on that ARM intellectual property to power the gadgets that go in our pockets, to eventually power, the slim, light, portable computers that we're going to be playing with. I don't know. 40 billion sounds like I don't know, that it's just so strange in my brain. All right. Oh, and Matt Tyler is going to be getting his ROG3 tomorrow, so everyone congratulate Matt. He's finally back on the ROG camp. The ROG2 was his bay. Moving right along, we've got another acquisition story. This one, I think I'm not going to spend as much time on. NVIDIA ARM is a really big deal that we'll have to keep an eye out. We have to see what the market implications on that are over the next couple years. But in a much smaller bit of news, with the constant warring of social media with our current presidential administration and sort of the political affiliations of different countries sort of weighing in on social media best practices, this one was kind of a quiet reveal. So apparently, Microsoft is not going to buy TikTok. Oracle is going to buy TikTok. So your favorite Vine competitor is now going to Oracle. This is coming by way of AP. Matt O'Brien and Tali Arbel wrote this up over at AP News. The owner of TikTok has chosen Oracle over Microsoft as the American tech partner that could help keep the popular video sharing app running in the US, according to a source familiar with the deal who is not authorized to speak publicly about it. Microsoft announced Sunday that its bid to acquire TikTok's U.S. operations was rejected, removing the tech giant from the running a week before President Donald Trump promises to follow through with a plan to ban the Chinese-owned app in the U.S. over spying concerns. TikTok and the White House declined to comment Sunday. Whoever thought we would see that as like a comment in a legit news article? Social media service TikTok and the White House declined to comment over this deal. Oracle did not return a request for comment, but has previously declined to comment. Walmart, which had planned to partner with Microsoft on the acquisition, said Sunday it continues to have an interest in a TikTok investment and is talking about it with ByteDance and other parties. So there you go. I'm just not on the TikTok train. I don't do the TikTok. I'm not a fan of that kind of social media service, and I feel like whenever the whole point of your platform is just a different cutting of small snippets of video, it is eminently replicatable across any other social media or sharing service. And we saw the same thing with Vine. And I just don't see where I could be proven wrong. I was correct with Vine. I actually called it at a social media week. I was off by a year, but I said, Vine is imminently replicatable. Other players are going to copy off this business model and it's going to fall apart in like 2 to 3 years. And I was pretty close. I don't have the same kind of prediction over TikTok getting rolled over in like a year or two, but I just don't see what the value of the platform is when we know that literally every other company that has any kind of investment in short form video clips is already copying the core functionality of what makes TikTok TikTok. So I can't generate the interest in this beyond, the outside political ramifications that we have the presidential administration concerned about TikTok. And beyond that, it's a frivolity. It's a fun thing. Again, I want to take this stuff more seriously, but it's interesting when these kinds of social media platforms build these huge audience shares, big numbers, influencers become extremely popular, and then everyone tries to figure out their own mechanism for monetization. So like I've got thousands of followers on TikTok, and now I'm working out brand deals on the back end to make my TikTok experience more profitable. That interaction and that valuation, like what makes that valuable, is replicatable anywhere. And that to me it becomes one of the warning signs. Like, do you invest all of this energy into building up this big following on TikTok to really satisfy this type of an audience, and then what do you do with it? Like, where do you go if TikTok's numbers start to slide, or political issues between governments get in the way of you and your audience? It's heady stuff. Like Chatty Boy, like YouTube Shorts. YouTube Shorts aren't great, but again, there's a solution that you can already leverage an existing YouTube audience, and you already probably at that point will have some kind of Google monetization. Instagram Reels from TK Bay have already copied and rolled out their TikTok business model. Gabaletta, it's a form of way to get you addicted by short, almost like cliffhanger style clips to get you to keep watching on the platform. I understand the mechanics. I'm not saying, like, but what I'm saying is this is not unique. We have been playing with this since the beginning of small snippet social media, right? From the dawn of Twitter and your notification feed on MySpace, those little, every time you refresh, there's a new little bit that triggers the brain and releases the feel good chemicals into your brain. And then we went through Vine and loops and things that kind of structured the brain. And then Instagram ripped off a lot of Vine functionality. And again, we just kind of keep seeing those patterns play out and play out, play out. And that, I think the main selling point for TikTok was it's not Facebook, right? I feel like you can only go so far with the business model of we're not Facebook owned to a point. And then eventually momentum from other competing services will start to chip away or erode what makes the novelty of TikTok unique, because we've seen this before. I mean, TikTok isn't unique in that respect already. It's just piggybacking on other short video clip services that we've seen before. But now it's apparently going to go to Oracle. So Oracle, with all of their lawsuits about like Java and stuff, they can afford to buy TikTok. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. All right. Back hosting. We are not Facebook. Press F for Oculus. Oh, Oculus. Apparently there's going to be a new Oculus headset coming out too. What is it, a Quest 2 or something like that? I've been seeing rumors on that. This week has too much tech going on. Just way too much tech. This was kind of an important story for gaming. And I'm going to piggyback this right into Microsoft's announcement for their streaming service. Let me get this here. And the Oculus stock. Dave Burns. So Facebook can stalk you with a face computer, or the Oculus Creep. I love it. So we talked about this a little while back. Apple in the middle of antitrust investigations, in a direct showdown and a huge conflict with Epic Games, which is going to spend years in courts. We're talking about a legal battle that started today. We're seeing headlines today and will play out for years. I guarantee you this will not be concluded by the end of 2020, especially once we start talking about verdicts coming down and then appeals and then moving it up the chain. We're going to see potentially a shift in how gatekeeper organizations like Apple and Google do business with developers and stand in the way in between developers and consumers. So when you buy your phone, you don't have control over it. You don't own it. You are paying a license to Apple to use your phone the way that Apple tells you to use your phone. And that needs some kind of regulatory examination. Again, we might come to the end of this and conclude this is still the best way for consumers to do business with different organizations. But I feel like along the way, we're still going to see some rough adjustment. The first step in this is, how can you provide other platform storefronts on something like an iPhone or an iPad? This is a very heady question, and I'll be curious to see how Apple implements payment structures and forces game developers to play ball with App Store rules. Look at the huge showdown that we've seen between Steam and Epic Games on the PC side of gaming. And like, oh man, like Steam's cut of gaming revenue is just way too much. And we at Epic Games, we're going to give more of the money that you pay back to the developers. And it's creating this little hinge point of competition for PC gaming and PC digital online storefronts. Well, Apple takes a much bigger cut of every transaction that happens on iOS than Steam does when you buy games on the PC. So, let me click this over here. This is from TechCrunch. Apple lays out its messy vision for how xCloud and Stadia will work with its App Store rules. Apple laid out some interesting updates to its App Store rules this morning, the most headline-grabbing of which was a section dedicated to cloud gaming platforms like Microsoft's xCloud and Google Stadia. This comes after very public complaints from Microsoft regarding xCloud's rejection from the App Store, which Apple denied because its App Store rules fundamentally did not allow game streaming platforms. The outcry from gamers was notable given how hyped this launch is to the future of the Xbox platform. The saga was also timed alongside Epic Games' broader complaints about in-app purchases on the game store. So I want to get down to... So TechCrunch simplifies this. The gist is that Apple will allow game streaming platforms like xCloud and Stadia to operate, but each game in their library will need to have its own separate App Store listing, and each title will have to be downloaded from the store. How dumb is that? Sorry, that was my editorializing. Back to the article. Each of these games will be discoverable inside the App Store, potentially meaning that the same game will exist inside multiple pages for multiple streaming platforms. In addition, xCloud and Stadia will be able to house their own catalog apps, but they will still have to kick users to the App Store when they want to score a new title. The end result is that this solution is incredibly less plug and play for game developers, and developers will have to integrate their payment systems with Apple's in-app purchase framework. It also means that developers are going to have to balance the in-app purchases cut for Apple with whatever deal they have worked out with the streaming platform. So, yeah, this is unacceptable. Like, this doesn't work. Apple isn't running the servers, right? Apple's costs are listing xCloud in the App Store. That's it. When you stream a game, you're going over a Microsoft server. Apple exists solely as a 30% cut gatekeeper in between Microsoft and the person using that iPhone. And so you're just paying for the access of people using iPhones and iPads. And something tells me that this is very similar to how this is all going to work on Macs. You want to stream a game on your Mac and it's got Apple Silicon, custom trademark, TM, copyright, intellectual property, Apple Silicon. You're going to have to go through an Apple store, right? The whole point of going with an ARM reference design also makes it much easier for Apple to lock up the Mac OS side of this too. So if you want the best running version of something like Stadia, it's gonna hammer you there too. This is so clumsy. I would be upset if I were a hardcore iOS user because this also makes the App Store messier and more confusing to navigate. So you look up a game on xCloud and you're like, well, I want to use my xCloud account, but now I also have to individually purchase or interact with other listings on the App Store. So Stadia, it makes a touch more sense because Stadia isn't the same kind of catalog subscription, right? You're paying Stadia to stream like it's a console, and then you buy individual games. So that kind of makes a bit more sense. But when you're looking at the Xbox solution of this, where it is a bit more like Netflix for gaming, it makes a lot less sense to have specific listings for every single game that's going to be on xCloud. And some of them might be part of like a Game Pass style subscription. And you have to know that like your Game Pass style subscription, 30% of that, if you engaged through the App Store, is going to Apple when Apple does nothing. Apple does nothing. in this relationship. Apple helps not at all in facilitating the experience of gaming and improving gaming on iOS devices, because we know Apple Game Pass isn't making better gaming happen for iOS and iPadOS users. So this is exactly the kind of regulatory adjustment we should be examining as we investigate the consumer experience. And I don't believe Apple... I don't agree with Apple's assessment that there is competition, because you can always just completely leave the Apple ecosystem and go buy competing products. Just, if you bought into Apple, just scrap everything that you've invested in, and then you can have competition by leaving. There's the door. Competition. I think we also need in this digital market to kind of examine Apple has a monopoly on the Apple experience, and as such, they can engage in some pretty anti-consumer behaviors with Apple customers. Again, the people that are most invested in the Apple ecosystem are the ones we're most worried about here, and probably need the most regulatory protections and oversight. So this is not it. Apple's solution here, this is not the way forward for improving the state of mobile gaming, of getting better games into our hands, because our phones are stupid powerful and should have no issues running near console grade gaming experiences, and having a catalog and a platform to help facilitate that when Apple isn't much interested in doing that. This ain't it. This is not the way. Vasicos 8. How many times can iMessage save Apple? I'm telling you, like our RCS in Google Messenger has been pretty nice. All things compared, I've definitely been having easier experiences tying together SMS, MMS, and more instant message style conversations on Android. Ways to go. We can still clean that up, but it's been better than it has been in a long time. From B4 Gaming, Apple's game streaming service rules are crazy. Why isn't the same thing applied to video and music streaming? And we brought this up too. Do you believe that when you buy something on Amazon on an iPhone, that Apple still gets 30% of that sale? I would be very surprised to have that verified. I seriously I don't have any info. I don't know. Again, none of this is public disclosure, but I don't believe that if I buy something on my iPhone through the Amazon app, which I downloaded through the Apple App Store, that Apple gets a 30% cut of that transaction. So Tim Cook can testify before a judiciary committee saying, oh, everyone's treated the same. Everything's equal. Everyone's the same on the Apple App Store, except for the companies that aren't. Some companies aren't the same, but everyone's treated the same. Microsoft and Epic and everyone, but not everyone. But everyone is treated the same. Again, I feel like when you're under oath, that's probably a contradiction worth investigating. I'm not saying perjury, but he was under oath. He should have at least referenced counsel. He had lawyers there. You talk to the lawyers. Or you say, oh, I don't have a comment specifically on that. I'll get back to you with some kind of follow-up. Never. Hold on, let me get this out of the way. Might it happen? I'm really considering breaking out of the ecosystem because xCloud will be almost non-existent on iOS. I just think it's going to be cumbersome and confusing to use, which again, Apple claims all of this is to make things easier for consumers. And I don't believe that. I don't believe Apple has really been refining services and offering the better vision for consumer electronics since the Steve Jobs era. Like what really made the iPhone a compelling solution against Blackberries and Windows Mobile and Palm OS of the day, I don't believe that exists anymore. And I feel everything that they've done to enhance functionality has made each of their platforms more difficult to use, less intuitive and less familiar, and more expensive. A across the podcast, this is from Sam. I'm thinking about trying Stadia on my Duo with an Xbox controller connected. I tried firing up a few games on the Duo. There is some weirdness there, but I'm using a SteelSeries. I don't know if that's going to work with xCloud, but I flippin' love my little SteelSeries controller. It's so good. It doesn't fit in the phone cradle, though. It's just so wide. All right. I just wanted to piggyback this real quick because, we're talking about xCloud launching. Apple has a terrible solution for getting streaming services on iOS. And it's timely because Microsoft will have more than 150 xCloud games when it launches tomorrow. So if you're on Android, whoo, baby, yeah. Tomorrow, xCloud time. September 15th for Android tablets and phone. xCloud is being bundled into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate as a game streaming feature. Microsoft is launching an update to the Xbox Game Pass app on Android in 22 countries. Missing from the list of 150 games are EA Play titles. Microsoft revealed last week that it's adding EA Play to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, but the games won't be available on xCloud until later this holiday. Microsoft has previously demonstrated Gears 5 using touch controls, and xCloud testers have had access to touch controls for Hellblade for around a month now. Expect a lot more games to pick up these controls in the months ahead. Unfortunately, xCloud won't be available on iPhones or iPads. I mean, again, it's cool that they're working on touch controls. This is why I would love to see Microsoft talk a little bit more to LG. Like we just saw the LG Wing announcement, LG Dual Display. I'd love to have a custom Xbox controller specifically designed for LG dual screens, so that you can kind of skin it real fast and jump right into what would be an Xbox or xCloud gaming experience. But at the same time, man, if you're looking at xCloud, get a hardware controller. It's so silly to me, like you've got like the Razer Kishi or Kishi. I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce that. And you're like, yeah, that's kind of cool. But my SteelSeries is actually out in the living room because that's where I was playing. A proper, Xbox, PlayStation, or third-party manufacturer like my SteelSeries and a little phone clip. It's so good. I mean, that combination. It does such a good job of rivaling what I like about the hardware and tactile experience of something like a Nintendo Switch. And the reason why I like old school controller with some type of phone mount is if you still have access to something like a headphone jack, or if you use like a USB-C, a cabled headphone set, audio on a smartphone over Bluetooth isn't good enough for gaming. It's not. That lag drives me nuts. And so plugging in something with a cable makes using the Razer solution kind of a no-go. Like if I'm kicking on the couch and, my wife is at her little computer terminal and my daughter's either watching something on the TV or doing some schoolwork on her Chromebook, I'm using headphones. And I like being able to plug in a nice headset and kind of keep that experience a little bit more private. And I can't do that if you block the ports on a phone. So I don't know. And also it's not that expensive. I think I got my SteelSeries on sale for like $25 and it's such a good controller. And then I can double use it. Like it's got a little plug so that I can use it with a Windows PC. Just do it. It's so handy. Matt Tyler, my PlayStation 4 controller works on xCloud perfectly. And Pacosin, it would be cool for Microsoft to integrate something similar. Blue Malicious, proper controllers are also better to avoid repetitive strain injuries for long gaming sessions, usually have better ergonomics, and I can definitely attest to that. Also, I mean, it's just, since I've been picking up LG dual screen phones so that I can move my game controls off of the display, it's just nice not blocking in-game elements with your hands. It's small. I mean, like, I'm not saying go out and buy dual screen phones because you're going to be playing a ton of games on them, but I play a ton of games on my dual screen phones, and it's a better experience. It really is. I happily trade the absolute fastest screen refresh rate just to have better ergonomics, mappable, customized controls, and nothing blocking my gameplay. My Hobbit hands don't block the screen. It's just better. Vazikos 8, replace phone mount for tablet mount. And boom, Microsoft Duo X Cloud with controller, single screen. So yeah, 150 games. So that is definitely a stronger launch for xCloud than what Stadia kind of limped into the market with. Have the games, and you're going to have more players playing the games, and it makes your service look a lot more interesting. Just to follow that up real quick, there's not a lot of news here, but like I said, this week is going to be crazy busy for tech. Sony doesn't want to be left out of this conversation, and they're going to have a PlayStation 5 games showcase in a couple days on September 16th, 4 p.m. Sony's taken numerous opportunities to show off PlayStation 5 gameplay ahead of the console's launch, but it's ready for another. The company has announced a PlayStation 5 Games Showcase event that will stream live on Twitch and YouTube on September 16th at 4 p.m. Eastern. It didn't tease what games would appear, but the 40-minute virtual presentation would include titles from Sony Worldwide Studios and other dev partners, including games arriving on launch and beyond. So, this is big time for gaming. Moving games around. I really genuinely believe this is the last major generation of console boxes. You know, like I think we've kind of hit peak console, and from here we're going to start seeing forking. We're going to start seeing lines split off, game streaming services, local gameplay versus PC gameplay versus under your TV gameplay versus playing on a mobile device or some other screen. We're going to start seeing those little tendrils growing and flowing out of the main core gaming experience. And I'm really excited because I think this is opportunity to again, bring console gamers into mobile devices for gaming, and we might see more innovation on games that play better on mobile. You know, augmented reality, location-based gaming, you know, GPS, and, you know, you've got Pokemon Go, the wizarding world of Harry Potter. And we haven't seen as much of a push to try and expand on really engaging play mechanics for mobile. But when you've got more traditional gamers to satisfy using mobile devices, I think that's an opportunity to start driving some innovation into the gaming market again. From West Easton, that's been the hope, but so long as Sony has arguably the best exclusives, they'll stick around. When I say that this is the change, it's not like, you know, we're in the post-smartphone era, right? LG, Samsung, Microsoft showing us what future crazy, wacky concepts are for smartphones. Just because we're in the post-smartphone era doesn't mean desktop computers went away. So Sony's experience here, like this is the last major year where your Sony exclusives exist solely on Sony console boxes. So how long does a console last? 5 years? 8 years? Somewhere in there? At the end of this console gen, if we don't have... Think about where we were 5 years ago and how many people were complaining about like the Xbox needing an internet connection and the rise of a digital marketplace like Steam to become this indomitable force in PC gaming. 5 years is an eternity in tech. And in 5 years, if we're still doing, I hope this next box has even more powerful guts, and that's the only way I engage with Sony titles under my TV. I have to sit in front of my TV, and that's where I play. That will be a tragic failure of the gaming market. I need us techies, I need us geeks to remember the imagination, right? We're so used to right now, techies are super conservative and we can only envision the exact same thing that we have, but it's a little bit more powerful, right? We've been trained and conditioned to not be imaginative. Well, it needs to have this chipset and this kind of screen and this type of form factor, and that's what a gadget is. We need to broaden our horizons. Blue Malicious. This stream just got adult. Juan says we'll be seeing forking and tendrils. I maybe just gave up a little bit of my anime viewing preferences. Simon says, Hypno, we're reiterating, not innovating. So I'm going to say let's call that for the news block because I really want to get into the gadget block, but I want to take a couple minutes here just to shout out the subreddit. Every podcast has a subreddit. You should be on the Reddits. They're interesting ways to see some of the best and worst of humanity, all in one convenient timeline. My podcast is no exception, but I run a subreddit to try and help promote other content creators. It is my assertion that the YouTube algorithm and algorithms in general are bad for you. And so if you're trying to build the channel, or if you're a fan of a content creator or a tech writer or a journalist, and you feel they're not getting the attention they deserve, then I hope you'll check out reddit.com/r/glowing-rectangles. It's a tiny little community, but it's growing every week. We're at 1,174 followers, and I'm regularly seeing double digits in people perusing our offerings here. We can always use more sharing, more participation, more upvotes. And like I said, this is trying to help spread the word on content that you feel deserves more attention. Or it's a place to self-promote as long as you don't get too spammy. There's a lot of larger subreddits. You can't share your own stuff because they're dumb. I'm looking at some big subreddits right now. You're dumb. All right, these are the top stories on reddit.com/r/glowing-rectangles. We've got Team Vry, 740 subscribers, took the #1 spot on our glowing rectangles. When was the last time YouTube offered you a channel with under 1,000 subscribers as a main video to consume? But here, Team Vry is trying out Android 11 on the Pixel 3a, which is a nice little change of pace because I'm demoing on the Pixel 4a. But looking back, one of the benefits of owning a Pixel is getting those updates. And even last year's lower power Pixel day one update for Android 11 is rad. All right, follow up. We've got user Johannes Sensei talking about AirDrop for Android, some nearby share action. Got a Note 20 Ultra review from Adam Reviews Tech at 666 subscribers. Well, that's a little dangerous. I'm going to push subscribe live on this view feed to give him 667. Someone else is going to have to unsubscribe so he can keep his 666. We've got DavTech, 1.27 thousand, so 1,200 subscribers. Checking out the LG Velvet 5G. We've got my sister from another Mr. Trisha Hirschberger talking about her new laptop. We've got Gaming Retro, making Windows 10 look like Windows 95. This is, again, just staying in the top 10 from last week. Oh, no, this is the follow-up. So this is the new ANC King, One More True Wireless. He took a top spot during the week, a daily top spot. My brother, LFA Reviews, looking at some amazing One More True Wireless earbuds. My video saying goodbye to the iPhone XS, I think, closes this out. And then we've got videos. Poco X3 from Josh Vergara. The Poco X3 from Fandroid. We've got someone checking out Mint Mobile's new unlimited plan. Top features from Android 11. We've got TK Bay, his stream, setting up a Surface Duo. There's so much broad conversation. This is the other one I wanted to showcase. Mr. Tech Rant, been doing a bunch of videos. So Trent, some really great content on phones and value. Should you ever pay full price for Samsung phones? This is a really good editorial. So his commentary on this stuff has been pretty savage. So you should give him a follow. And that's just the way. That's just the way of how we're setting up a subreddit, a community, and trying to spread the word on a broader conversation. You go to YouTube. YouTube has a vested interest in only serving you the absolute highest viewed content in a mechanic that is designed to try and keep you on their site, on their platform, as long as they can. And that's not the reality of all of the other voices making interesting, engaging content on our favorite topics. So again, if you haven't checked it out, reddit.com/r/glowing-rectangles. And if you've not been, I guarantee you're going to find some content creators you've never seen before and that you're going to dig the kind of stuff that they make. it's just a fact. I found new creators that I've never seen before from people sharing their friends and their subscribers. So it's a passion project of mine, but one that's been growing every week. So so I feel like, you know, it's worth continuing this experiment because I personally, I get a lot of value out of it too. So reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles. Check out the subreddit. More upvotes, more sharing the subreddit so they can help kind of bring more people to check out the project and see some of this content. And I think it's going to be better for all of us in a way that isn't just eating our vegetables. You'll find new cool stuff to check out too. So let's get into the gadget block. I'm gonna drink some water. Woo! I'm cranking, man. Look at this. 9 a.m. on the dot. News and subreddit plug and housekeeping. 1 hour exactly. If only my show ran like this all the time. I feel like I'm speaking really fast. Man, I'm only on 1 cup of coffee too. So gadget block. I'm gonna leave it up. Let's see in the chat real quick. 3 main topics: Android 11, LG Wing, Surface Duo. What am I talking about first? Ready, go. And drink some more water while you vote. Which one? Matt Tyler says Wing. B4 Gaming says Wing. Simon says Hypno says Wing. Vince says Wing. Wing. Jeff Franklin says Duo. I think I should go with Jeff and Steve. Jeff, Steve, and Chatty. Are we saying Wing? I mean, I've got the Duo right here. I feel like I should listen to the minority on this. I mean, people hurting my feelings by saying Lou is now the registered recommended LG shill. So I don't know. I mean, why should I listen to you guys if you're trying to hurt my feelings? Like, I feel like that's bad form. Warhead, Android 11. Why don't we close out with Android 11? Let's talk about the Wing. LG showed off the Wing, and it's a phone with a very interesting dual screen mechanic. Oh man. I had to reboot my computer before the live stream, and now I don't think my photo gallery is working. Give me 1 second. I'm going to try and make this work again. I'm not sure how well this is going to work. I'm so mad. Add a directory. Go to desktop. LG Wing, select folder. Okay. Let's see. I don't know if I can get this. Oh, come on. So I took a bunch of screen grabs during the broadcast. And let me just pop this all the way up here. Okay. Welcome to the LG Explorer project. I got it working. LG Wing. We got confirmation that the phone is a real phone that phones and does phone things, and we got some insight as to what was going to be inside of it. We don't have the full official breakdown on all of the specs and like battery capacity, storage sizes, what the other sort of additional side features are going to be, but we've got a really good idea of what the main mechanic is here. LG is making a much more vocal play, a much more visible play at their skunk works. Right? We had a couple months back, I had an interview with some of the folks at TCL, and they were very candid about their approach to building these prototypes that aren't built. They really don't have an intention of making that exact device a consumer-facing product, especially in this era of folding screens and modular designs and things like that. So LG has to have a little team of quiet engineers that just makes crazy stuff. And then they see what might be viable and what they can push to market. And the Explorer project is going to be sort of their premium offerings or niche offerings for bringing new form factors to market. Again, that this is an actual consumer facing solution that's gonna deliver the goods. So the first experiment of this project, of this Explorer team, is going to be the LG Wing. We've been seeing this teased for a while. How do I? Oh no! What are my? I totally messed this all up. What? Hold on, I've got to do something here. I might just do this in my browser. This is getting a bit silly. What are my hotkeys though? I can't remember what I set the hotkeys to move the slides. This is the worst podcasting ever. Okay, I'm just going to use my browser. Sorry. I had to scrap it and then rebuild it. So let's just do this. So we got really pretty views of hinges and slider mechanisms. There's like a spring, and this phone screen swivels out, and it stays decently thin, all things considered. But what we end up with is this T shape that that allows for landscape content or landscape creation on the main front-facing screen, and then not quite square. It's a 1.5 to 1 aspect ratio, but fairly square screen on the bottom. And LG's, I guess LG's philosophy here is nothing should interrupt what's happening on your main screen. So the only way to facilitate that, and Android is kind of dumb, you have to give Android a completely separate space. Now, this should be kind of familiar. If you followed LG at all over the course of their career, the course of their experiments, LG has always tried to offer some additional or enhanced notification and display capabilities, all the way back to the LG V10. So LG started with these little ticker displays that would expand on the functionality of notifications. It gave you an extra place just to dock some shortcuts. But then the main phone display, free of these types of interruptions or free of these types of distractions. And so here we're getting a bunch of interesting design tweaks from LG in ways that we've not seen from the company consumer facing before. So yeah, I'm a big fan of LG dual display, and I'm a huge fan of dual display in general. I think dual display is the more practical lifestyle way to improve multitasking, enhance functionality. So when I come back into screen share, I want to see if I can find it. But from this image right here, no notch. We're finally getting an LG all front face display. I'm pretty sure this is the same OLED that we're seeing on the Velvet and on the V60. Only now they're not cutting into the OLED with some kind of selfie camera. So there is no selfie camera here. It's all screen. It's all display, because I've got a screenshot of it. LG is going to be using a 32 megapixel pop-up selfie. So now there's going to be a motorized action to raise a selfie camera if you want to shoot from that selfie. It is a functional solution. They did mention that I think what's kind of interesting. Hold on, let me see if I can find this. I've got so many screenshots. It's kind of silly. I think I had their certifications. Because they're still claiming mil-spec, but I don't believe they're claiming IP. So here, let me get down. My main concerns for this were the lifestyle and the durability and all that stuff. So, I mean, they of course show us these images of robots doing, articulating the screens over 200,000 times, the durability testing. It's like these are concerns. Like we should be examining some of these claims, and from what they've been discussing for how this functions, how a spring on a screen is going to swivel out a major part of the front face of the phone, and all the things they did to kind of reduce weight. That this is a more skeletal structure where they've cut all of these holes into the frame that supports the main outer display, and to reduce weight is kind of a big deal. So we get this. They are still holding to their mil-spec. LG devices maintain a mil-spec rating 810G for drop and shock resistance. In a world of glass-on-glass sandwiches, that doesn't mean if you drop your phone, it won't crack or it won't break. As far as I've understood it, mil-spec 810G, as LG certifies it, or as LG reports, is if you drop your phone, the internals will be survivable. There's a greater likelihood you'll still get content, data, information off of that device, not if you drop the device, the screen won't crack. So that's again, it's correct in that the device should be more survivable. It sets up, I think, an unrealistic expectation that consumers can kind of drop their phones and not worry about damage, but it's supposed to give you a little bit of peace of mind. If you break this phone, the internals should still survive to a degree where you can get stuff back. But I don't believe that they have an official IP certification. So when we've got moving parts and a hinge and a pop-up selfie camera, I don't believe we're going to be seeing IP68. I think it's just too difficult and too expensive to make any device with this many moving parts the same kind of ingress protection as what we see from a completely sealed up or normal phone. But they are talking about there's a water repellent coating on the inside. So we should see something that's decently splash resistant. They had this cute little animation. I got a couple screen grabs of that. But again, I think one of the things that bothers me about that, I would prefer LG still give us what the IP rating is. So let's say this is only IP53. I mean, you can think back. I mean, we've had phones like the HTC 10, and that got panned because it wasn't IP67. But no, that was fine. IP53 at least tells us that there's some consideration for splash resistance. You spill something on your phone, you kind of shake it, and you should be fine. You're caught in some light rain, you should be okay. It's really, I wish we had that kind of reporting, because then we would know better what the potential limits of this product might be. Like, how careful are you going to need to be with an LG Wing if you're in the middle of a thunderstorm, or if there's just light rain, or, someone spills coffee on your table? Stuff like that, I feel, is still a consumer benefit. It's just a shame because as soon as you say not IP68, then you run with headlines. Can you believe it? They're going to sell an expensive phone. It's not IP68. I need the IP68s. And I hate that like branding and marketing has like infiltrated the brains of techies so that it's just a spec sheet bullet point. It is actually probably more profitable for a company like LG or OnePlus or any of these other brands to just not disclose the IP rating. Because if you disclose an IP rating lesser than, then people get, oh, this is unacceptable and I need all the best numbers. Why don't I have gooder numbers on this spec sheet? So that's where we are now. You can thank all these other like YouTube pontificators for making tech worse for everybody. From ER 1980, it's probably got water repellent coating for humidity. Now, what they showed was weather. So they, I didn't get a good screenshot of them. Like, so this is the screenshot that I got, but for environmental testing. So not humidity. Nope, there we go. Not humidity, but like rain and spray. So that's what again, this is not an official disclosure of what their ingress protection might be, but they're sort of making an assumption, or they're leading consumers to infer that this phone should be survivable in sort of a spray of rain. And for Matt Tyler, the main concern is dust, sand, things like that getting under the swivel and absolutely destroying the phone. And they did also mention that there was some concern and consideration for the two pieces, because we can see like there's this big hinge assembly on the top half of the bottom frame, and then there's just a screen on its own frame that swivels out. But if sand, to Matt's point, if sand or dust or grit gets on the underside of the outer screen and then it swivels shut, well, that's going to be a concern. I mean, that could wreck that bottom screen. So there's material science and different coatings. They talked about polyoxymethylene being one of the materials coating the under screen, the smaller little ticker display, not ticker display, the smaller square display, and that's hopefully going to alleviate some of the lifestyle issues presented with something getting under the two pieces. I mean, that to me becomes one of the biggest anxious concern points. All the cool tech, all the cool functionality, all the cool features, like I'm on board. I am a huge fan of using dual display and having extra screen real estate. But the fact that these two pieces are joined, like they're permanent. If I'm doing something dumb with my V60 and I manage to break a part of this case, two things have probably happened. You can actually see there's an LG V60 subreddit on Reddit that a number of people have busted their dual display cases, but the case did a reasonably good job of protecting the phone, and the phone came out unscathed. So it's an expensive damage, right? This is around $100, maybe more, case for all the extra functionality and the extra display, but it did do its job protecting the phone. So then I damage this outer case. I pop off the case. If I want to buy another one, I can. It's expensive, but I can do it. And I go back to using the phone the way that I want to. I have a different kind of lifestyle durability concern for two reasons. When we expand, let me pull this one. There's the very real usage scenario of unequal pressure being applied to one side of the screen when it's swiveled out. So how solid will this mechanism be for unequal presses? Like, you can show me gaming, but I really want to get this in my hands to feel how this situates under my thumbs if I'm pushing against the screen at different levels of force to play a game. So there are just some unknowns, like how this thing ages, what kind of durability we should expect. I'm nervous about folding phones because the screen layer is really fragile because the entire hinge needs to be able to fold up the screen. I'm a little less anxious, but I'm still very anxious about a phone where this is fused. You have no option to replace parts of this. It's probably going to be really expensive to repair. And you run the risk of pushing up against one side of the screen versus the other. So I at least thought it was more responsible of them to focus more on the usability side of this. You're watching a movie and then you get a notification or an alert or a text or a message, and all of that happens down below. You don't have to worry about anything interrupting your experience on using the main display to consume content. And I feel like that was a better way to position the Wing. You can do things like gaming, but they didn't spend as much time on this as they talked about things like media controls. You tap the screen on YouTube and nothing blocks the screen. You want to scrub through a video, move to the next video in your playlist, rewind, fast forward. All of that now gets moved to an alternate control space. And that makes a lot of sense to me. I think that's a smart way to go about manipulating content. And it's still one of my biggest pet peeves on Android is I'm doing turn-by-turn navigation and I get a phone call, and my phone sees that I'm doing turn-by-turn nav. I'm likely traveling fast enough for the phone to know I'm operating a motor vehicle, and it still completely wipes out my map. And then I have to interact with my phone in the middle of a phone call while operating a car to get my map back. So, I mean, I don't want to overstate just how amazing an innovation, but this kind of stuff right here, GPS plus call, you know, this is one of the leaks that we saw with someone using the wing to do turn-by-turn nav and also have media controls. But this, to me, is one of the killer apps, is a phone call not obliterating my map view. I want this on all phones, and I don't want to have to buy an expensive head unit or do Android Auto. I kind of feel like my phone at this point should be smart enough without having to pull up an alternate UI or some other type of mechanism to do this. I mean, it should do that on a regular single screen device. But this is functionality I really want. I want this bad. And also, like, if I had a better phone mount, I think Steve was working with a phone mount or a car cradle that worked well with his V60 and dual display. But like, I haven't gotten anything that I really trust. I can stick this chonk and not have it like flop around in my car. So, and then lastly, because Tyler brought up the gimbal mode. So this looks to me like it's going to be a continuation and an expansion on Velvet, not on V Series. This whole Explorer program, I think, is going to be moving some things back away from the V Series and more towards this idea of consumer focused. Makes me a little anxious, makes me a little nervous. I want a V Series follow-up with like no compromises on content creation, multimedia playback, headphone jack, quad DAC, etc., etc., etc. But a lot of the fun stuff, you know, Velvet actually turned out to be, I'm still wrapping up that Velvet camera deep dive. I've got to get all the samples put into the video, and this is going to be a crazy busy week, but I think it should be done this week. The shooting experience on a Velvet is fine. It's you know, for all the people concerned about, oh, it doesn't have OIS or it should have had this megapixels or this other camera, like I could give this phone to any average consumer and I don't think they'd notice that anything was missing and that the shots were juicy and vibrant and were ready for social media sharing. That, I feel, is a direction increasingly kind of pushing LG towards that kind of content creation. So we look at, let me go back into screen share here. So of course I mentioned the 32 megapixel pop-up camera. Should be good for 4K 60 frame per second. Oh, I don't know if it'll support 60, but it should be good for 4K video. I don't know if the 765 in this thing is going to be good for 60 frame per second video. That's going to be interesting. I wonder if LG's cracked that yet. Oh, that's the screen. There we go. Here are the cameras. The main shooter is going to be a 64 megapixel ultra high resolution camera. So I have to believe that this is going to be the same sensor that we see in the V60. And then there's a 12 megapixel ultra wide big pixel camera. And then another 13 megapixel ultra wide camera. So it looks like they're kind of pulling the same trick that Samsung pulled. So 12 megapixel ultra wide big pixel camera. So a larger sensor, larger photo sites, probably better for low light capture also. And then a more traditional ultra wide, the 13 megapixel that we've seen on the last couple generations of LG phones. And also disappointing that it probably won't have like 60 frame per second capture on the ultra wide. What they're combining all of this together to produce is gimbal. So instant gimbal camera with 6 motion sensors, and they showed us some like tracking shots of people running and how super smooth and stable all of this is going to be. And it could be kind of interesting. I know we're seeing sort of this gimbal style functionality hitting phones with some of these sensors, but it's also just kind of cool to see. Like this is another application where you can hold the phone in portrait. The cameras are technically in portrait orientation, and you have this vertical control surface, which is a lot like a gimbal controller. A gimbal is like a stick with a motor on it, and it's shooting landscape video. So it's kind of been one of my dreams, like back in the days of like flip cameras, you would hold a flip camera up in a portrait orientation, but it would shoot in a landscape video. I think portrait video is the devil. It is the worst video experience you can create. It doesn't even look or feel that good on a phone screen. And as soon as I see video on a phone, I'm just sort of used to this 90-degree action is a bridge too far for people to enact with. Oh no, my wrist. I can't turn my phone sideways to look at this video. Wah. No. This is the gig. And I feel like when we're talking about that big pixel camera, we're probably employing something like this so that it does create a landscape orientation for high quality video with another degree, another step better of motion stability. So we've got the 765. It's going to have the 5Gs. I'll be curious to see if Wing launches as one unified piece of hardware. Because one of the things that's been interesting about Velvet is the different variants of Velvet. There is a 4G version of Velvet with a Snapdragon 845. There's the main version of Velvet with the Snapdragon 765. And now on T-Mobile, there's going to be a variant of Velvet that has a Dimensity 1000 from MediaTek. And Wing is now in that holding pattern. Because this is classic LG, is we've announced the phone, we've told you that the phone exists, but we haven't told you how much it's going to cost, and we haven't told you when it's set to arrive, and there will be other follow-up press releases. Now there's this window. This window could be a week before we get another press release that really details all of the regional distribution and if it's going to go to a carrier, if there's going to be an unlocked version, which I doubt. I don't think LG is going to do any unlocked phones this year. But the official word, pricing, availability, that all comes later. And in previous LG launches, like I said, it could show up in a week and then we get the details and then we're all happy. Sometimes it might take up to a month for that information to come out, and then it might take another month for the actual shipping and distribution. So that's heady stuff. I don't know. What's our over-under on Velvet? I'm thinking this is probably going to be $1,000 phone. I do not see any way that you can engineer a multiple display device on a reasonably rugged hinge with decent specs. I mean, the 765 isn't going to like blow anyone's mind, but I doubt it's going to hold many people back from having a nicer smartphone experience, if not at the top tier. It's a perfectly capable machine. Like Velvet doesn't feel like it hamstrings me to any great degree. What do we think? What do we think the arrival price of something like the Wing is gonna hit? Because I'm really, Simon Says Hypno says $899. Master Rye says rumors say it's gonna be around $1,000. Dave Burns says the gimbal feature is amazing. It looks really cool. I hope it is a hardware implemented solution, because I've played with, Samsung and LG. They've got those super steady modes. That's all just a very aggressive software cropping, and those work fine. But I typically prefer having a higher resolution with a little less motion smoothing. So, the video might be a little bit twitchier, but it's a higher quality video. Magus is saying $850. Two Spirits is saying $899.99. Raymondit is saying $1,300 Canadian. Nick Fell saying $1,000 on the nose. Nam saying $9.99. Walt Samarista saying around $7.99 to $8.99 would be fine for him. Make sure LG knows. If it's going to be okay for Walt, it's got to be around $8.99. Vazikos 8, cheaper than a Motorola Razr. I agree. I think it's going to be cheaper than a Razr. And Matt Tyler is upset because it's probably not going to go to the UK. Simon says Hypno. This could be interesting. I think they'll use it as use it almost as a loss leader to draw people back to the brand. I don't think LG is actually facing those kinds of issues like they have in years past. I think V60 probably performed better than V50 considering the price reductions at launch, and Velvet has been garnering a lot of positive buzz. And so LG has been dumping a ton of money into influencers, right? We've seen Linus Tech Tips videos. Austin Evans was the main presenter for this LG Wing announcement. Lou from Unbox Therapy was responsible for like the unboxing portion of what it was like to hold it, and it feels really nice in the hand. They've been getting a little bit savvier, and if they're putting that kind of money behind influencer marketing like that, and there were some other influencers that were maybe more like makeup and lifestyle vloggers that I just don't know who they are. They're putting that kind of cash behind it. I have to believe that the strategy of walking away from the Android specs nerds and trying to appeal to a more mass market consumer conversation, a la all of the various Oppo phones that like were just different takes on selfie cameras, is going to be a more successful take than making the most spec sheet baller phone they can. Because then that comes at a price that people don't want to pay. And then you end up with this like this consumer base of Android nerds that are really proud of themselves. Like, I only buy LG when it's in the bargain bin and, you know, it's been so devalued, but then I get a premium phone. Well, congratulations. Now we don't have a G9. We're getting rid of the V series, and the move forward for the Explorer series is going to omit some features that we might like a headphone jack. This is the first major premium LG phone that's not going to have any headphone jack. We already took a step away from it on the Velvet. Didn't seem to bother anyone. Not having a quad DAC on their mid-ranger phone. And so now we've got to keep an eye out. Like, 2021 could be it. my one of my absolute favorite features on an LG is not just a headphone jack, but having an audiophile grade solution there. So I'm really anxious that if they pivot away from the V series and they rename it, you know, it's the LG Titan or whatever they're going to call it, and we get a Velvet 2, it's been normalized. No one else seems to care. You know, Samsung and Apple, they still sell plenty, and I don't feel like quad DACs are selling phones. You can say, oh, most people are buying LG for a headphone jack. BS. They are not. That is not why most people are buying LGs. But the people that care about headphone jacks are concerned about that feature, so you focus on that. I think Velvet is going to show us that the absolute most premium audiophile quality hasn't changed their sales forecasts. And then Wing might show us that the novelty of a dual display phone overrides the desire to have cabled audio hardware. So it's interesting times. And again, we're sort of left in that middle window with LG where now we don't know what their distribution is going to be like, what their pricing is going to be like. I'm very anxious to see, like, is this going to be a holiday phone? Are they going to be able to get it out in time for sort of the Christmas season? Where are we landing? Because we're getting late in the year. 5G is still inching towards being something consumers might care about, and phone prices have been climbing up pretty high. So you've got to have sort of conversations and marketing on all points to make sure that people know what this thing has to offer. A first generation is always going to be more of a niche product or a niche solution, but you still want to make sure that those who would consider jumping on the first generation of this concept knows what it's capable of doing. I think this is a smart play because it focuses on the experiential side, not the benchmark side. This is very easy to quantify. It looks different. You want to watch a video and surf the web. You want to pull up a cooking video and do some grocery shopping. A GPS plus music, game plus in-game map, live video with live chat, and news and stock markets. These things matter more to consumers than talking about Snapdragon 865 Geekbench scores. Like, no one really cares about that. But you can show someone this phone call plus calendar. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that's something I've maybe have wanted to do in the past and is more difficult to do on a single screen phone. That kind of makes sense to me. Punch Kun, everything and Discord. That's hilarious. From Nick Feld, does LG have any market where they have sizable share South Korea? They're the number 3 player in the United States still. And I guarantee you, they're not the number 3 on the backs of their most expensive phones. They're the number 3 thanks to a fanatical following on the Stylo series as a more budget price product. And then all of their carrier partnerships for K series, those inexpensive phones. And then, you've got this sort of aftermarket. After we've decided that an LG was underrated, then people go and buy G series and V series at a reduced cost when there's great carrier deals. That's great. That is very savvy shopping. It was never going to be sustainable, and now here's the LG pivot where they're looking at a different kind of consumer experience. Aditya Anil, play PUBG and take a phone call. Matt Tyler, Microsoft, LG, Asus, Sony, Xperia Pro, all not in the UK. I feel there is something going on to do with Brexit and marketing deals that's scaring these companies off. I think it's uncertainty, right? International distribution is very complicated. You've got to draw parts from all over the world, manufacture in some place where you can then send back out to other regions again. And I think the UK is just an unknown. What's going on with the local economy, the local politics, importing, exporting, it's complicated stuff. And so I think a number of players like LG doesn't want to dedicate or commit to shipping a bunch of phones to the UK and then find out that taxes might change or that import duties might change or that there's restrictions on certain types of components. One of the things that I think killed Soli on the Pixel 4 was some regions you can't have a radar sensing front face with that kind of operating frequency because it violates local telecommunications ordinances. Like, that's kind of a bummer. So you don't make a phone that you can't ship to certain regions. And I think it's going to take a long time for some of these partnerships and agreements to sort out so people know what to expect. Walt Samarista. Surprisingly, there is no dual screen for the Velvet in Korea, and they still don't have the V60. LG, what is going on? Well, I mean, my Velvet is the Korean model, and it came with a dual display. Again, it might be a local shop or carrier issue with how dual screen is supported, but I mean, like my box came, it was a Korean handset. I had to switch the language over. John Fay 3, for God's sake, the fashion of rounded edges is so dumb. But again, it's how do you make the same OLED and then for some phones make it feel a little slimmer? You curve the edges. What I'll be curious is like, okay, we know this isn't going to get a headphone jack. We know there's no headphone jack on the wing. I'll be curious to see what LG's strategy is, because how great would it be if LG sold a quad DAC dongle? Remember, like LG used to sell that B&O Friend on the G5. If LG could supply that chip in an external casing, would be huge for all audio fans. Like I'd just rubber band that to my favorite pair of earbuds and then plug that into any other phone and just be like, this rocks. This would be awesome. It would kind of realize one of my biggest hopes for USB-C audio, would be to have a good premium accessible solution. I'd buy 3 or 4. Like I would. It'd be expensive, but I'd probably still do it. At this point, if you want to have a nice headphone jack on a phone, you're talking about a roughly $100 feature. So cutting that out of a phone, I'm not saying it's directly the component of the quad DAC costs $100, but to replace it, especially something like Bluetooth with a good amp, like my BTR5 here, this is $100. That's what you need to pay to replace that functionality. So you go and buy a G8 on, a bargain bin at like $300. That's great, but LG can't keep selling those kinds of phones. So I'll be really curious. I'll be really curious to see how they fix some of those solutions. We know they've been getting more aggressive with true wireless earbuds. Like I've reviewed the LG Tone, their little true wireless earbuds. They've always been at the bleeding edge of tech for neckband and Bluetooth. I still love LG neckbands. They're phenomenal. But I'll be curious to see, will the Wing include the same kind of stylus functionality that we've seen on the Velvet? Because that also makes for a really good sales add-on, right? You can get this Wing, and then you add a Wacom pen, and you've got a Note competitor in a dual display permanent form factor, swivels out. That could be really cool. Moving back and forth between 2 displays. Like I love it on dual display phones. Doing something like that on the Wing could be excellent. And if it's the same screen assembly as what we've seen on V60 and Velvet, it'd be kind of cool if we get that here too. Simon says, Hypno, V60 is $650 on T-Mobile. Trying to dig at Matt because Matt can't get one in the UK. So that's the Wing. I'm still anxious. Everything that I love about LG's strategy with Velvet and V60 has been modularity. Is that you buy a base phone and then you make it the phone that you want. You buy a stylus or buy a dual display, get a memory card, all these things that kind of fit together. Wing is so fresh, is so aggressive. I'm anxious because one, I want to see how it performs real world. I want to chuck it around. Can you get a case for it? How can you protect it? I seriously doubt the clearance will allow for a screen protector on the hidden display, but can you put something on the front face at least? Will it still have a memory card slot? Stuff like that. Like I want to know the details on all of that. But on top of that, this is also going to be their opportunity where if they decide to start cutting out some of these features, it's because they're pushing so forward on radical designs. If you actually watched the LG Wing announcement, you also got a teaser. They had credits, and then they had an after the credits Marvel-style teaser, and I got a couple screen grabs of that too, where this very dark silhouette of something sliding in and out, it was a little suggestive, then illuminated. And it's a very broad surface that illuminates after this piece slid out. So it slides out, it slid in, slid out, and then got real bright. So it looks like we're going to be getting LG's version of something like the Fold. And instead of something that folds, it's going to be a scroll. And I like that idea better than having like a sandwich hinge, where you have to have an extra display and then different cameras, and then it opens, and then you have to have a different camera in there, and you have to replicate a lot of hardware to do something like the Fold. It looks like LG's solution is going to be a screen that slides out to the side to give you more of a square tablet, and then slides shut to be the main phone interface if you just want a normal candy bar style phone. So again, the Explorer project continues, and we're going to be getting some radical new hardware, some radical new designs. If they can solve the rigidity of how something might extend out to the side, I like that idea better than these like various folding, flipping, fragile screen concepts. So we'll have to see what LG can do there. DTNL, insert scrolling LG image, LG sliding into Juan's DM like, a. I really like the idea. So what Wing shows us is if you have a scroll, you could have a pop-up selfie, no cutout on the tablet screen. The rear is still the same bank of cameras that you would normally have on any other phone. You don't have to have an external display. You don't have to have a second display. You don't have to have a complicated hinge that bends the display. Scroll could be the better way to do an expandable surface area on a phone. I'll be real curious. Again, I don't know. I'm not a part of the Explorer program. I'm not big enough. My channel's not big enough to warrant that kind of interaction with LG, but hopefully I'll still be able to get my hands on some of this stuff when we get more word on it shipping to consumers. Walt Samarista, no crease on a scroll. I'm saying, like, there's other ways to do this. Well, the folding phones are the Wild West. Samsung hasn't finished the journey. They're just starting. And now we're going to see some other players getting into this too. And I mean, again, I've seen some concepts from TCL. I've seen some this tease from LG. Could be good. All right, that's going to wrap us up for the Wing. We can spend a little time talking about the Duo. Yeah, woo! The phone that every tech reviewer panned because it's not good enough for the monies. And I'm glad to see this Wing announcement because it kind of validates what some of what Microsoft is doing here. If you want radical newness in smartphone design and hardware that extends beyond just a normal phone screen interaction, and you want it to be well executed, like gorgeously well executed in a way that like feels like a premium product, these kinds of costs need to be built into the phone. They can't be written off. And I understand, some of the concerns. This is not a unicorn, everything is the bestest kind of phone, but it's also not priced as one. It's silly to say that on a $1,400 phone, but $1,400 is not the upper limit of bleeding edge smartphone tech or portable computing tech. $1,400 is now premium phone price for a regular phone, and then we climb up higher when we start getting to more extravagant hardware solutions. But Duo, I've been using it for a couple days now. Like I said, I've been talking out Duo a lot. One of the reasons why my voice is so fuzzy for this podcast, I joined TK on his stream and I joined Sam and Matt on their stream. There's a lot to talk about with Duo, and we're just starting. We're just starting this conversation. We haven't finished it because a bunch of YouTube channels put out reviews on mostly pre-release software. So, early impressions with the Duo. This could be the future for replacing laptops. I'm very positive on this form factor, on this design. I like the practicality and the perceived durability, especially for the screens, as it pertains to dual display over a single, more fragile folding or scrolling screen. Immediately, as soon as you start poking at this with a stylus in that kind of Note, a Galaxy Note style interaction, or what I've been doing with Wacom pens on my LGs, it's very easy to see a good fit for this on some kind of business administrator, executive assistant, backing up, sort of a power player, documents. Microsoft's strategy in really focusing on their own core systems makes a lot of sense here on a Microsoft branded, Surface branded ultra portable. I think immediately one of the things that just makes me the happiest about Duo is how this interface, their main UI, just replicates the Windows feel of using a proper desktop. So I've hooked up a mouse, or I've also used the stylus, and I plug it into an external monitor, and this works just like split screen Windows on Windows. And it's not like you need to have a dedicated desktop mode to get something that feels a lot like a regular desktop mode. I like it. It's, for all of these experiments that we've seen, the conversations we've had since those early days of the Courier. If anyone remembers those project renders that we saw of the Microsoft Courier, we could get a PDA or a portable computer from Microsoft that dual displays, Windows 7. Ooh, oh my gosh. Duo satisfies a lot of that idea for a portable pocket computer. Now, it's not going to do everything the best, and it still needs some software love. It absolutely does. My biggest complaint so far with the Surface, let me see if I can pull this up right now. I'm going to load one of my favorite games. So this is Anima. It's sort of a Diablo clone. It's loading sideways, right? So the normal interaction for the Duo when it's fully unhinged is landscape. It's like a landscape monitor. And then when you open up an app on one side, it's an automatic split screen for the main landscape. But you have a lot of these situations here where games might be coded for a specific orientation or report back to the phone a specific orientation. So let's say I want to play Anima. Well, I'm not going to play it sideways in portrait mode. I'm going to turn it. So, okay, let me turn it sideways. Oh, no, it flipped it upside down. Okay, well, let me turn it around and now I'll play it like this. And oh, no, it flipped it upside down. So this to me is like Microsoft obviously focusing on core services. They want you to use xCloud. They want you to use Office. They want you to use Outlook, stuff like that. It needs some correction because to get it to orient properly, you've got to expand the whole phone. And then when you flip it, it flips correctly. But as soon as you disable this other screen, it assumes an orientation for the game that doesn't make sense. So the biggest issue I have is when tech tries to be too smart in anticipating what you're trying to do with it. So on an LG, you can occasionally run into issues on the dual display. Let me get out of personal information here. You can occasionally run into similar issues. You'll turn it sideways and then app will flip around, or you tip it flat and the accelerometer detects motion to the side and it's going to flip the game around. LG's solution is less elegant because it makes you poke a setting. But let me pull up something that will go sideways. Let me pull up Reddit. Flip that over. Turn it sideways. But you can force the LG to recognize that the orientation is off and you can rotate it 180 degrees. Well, someone who claims LG has bad software would look at that and say, well, that's so clumsy. It should just work. It should know what the orientation is and properly rotate the app for me. I shouldn't even have to think about it. But apps report to Android in different ways. Accelerometers do funky things to the orientation. Android really isn't that smart, especially when we're dealing with multiple display surfaces on one product. So LG's solution here is less elegant, but it's more functional. At any time, I just tap that little rotate button and I can force the orientation back to where I think it should go. If any two companies should be talking about this stuff together, I understand, Microsoft's partnership with Samsung is probably the better long-term partnership, more profitable, have more interoperability between the largest Android manufacturer, get Microsoft services on Samsung products. But every piece of the Duo that feels a little clumsy is so well executed on LG's solutions. And all the things that make LG feel a little cumbersome are automatically handled better on the Duo. These two phones, I'm holding up my V60 and my Surface Duo, almost feel like puzzle pieces of pros and cons. That like the aesthetic and the idea and the execution of both of these stapled together would give us, I feel, the truest representation of how dual screen could operate on a pocketable, portable solution like this. Nick Fell, why is it so hard to use the accelerometer to detect down and align the bottom of the app in that direction? I thought this was solved in like 2011. Well, first of all, it hasn't been, because apps also report what their perceived orientation should be. So this is also something that developers are going to have to start acknowledging on multiple screens, because it's not one screen. Then we also have to talk about the difference in philosophy. LG's philosophy is stitching two phones together. This works like you would imagine two phones stapled together. You know, I want to pull up my games list and I can flick and move that back and forth, but it's two distinctly separate operating system environments, like having two phones side by side. And there's some functionality where if I want, I can kind of force enable a wide mode, but this isn't really LG. Right? This is a third-party app that's giving me this functionality on an LG app. And then there's a handful of Google services that will allow for a wide canvas. This is not intended, for the most part, it's not intended to be a single operating space. It's supposed to be different functions and multitasking on steroids. So I can play a game on one and have like Instagram on another, but turning it sideways, well, Instagram prefers more of a portrait orientation and gets a little weird sometimes when you have landscape. And then videos crop to a different aspect ratio, and that can get a little funky depending on the app. Then you could split screen on one phone or go picture in picture, and all that stuff gets really weird. Microsoft's solution here is the polar opposite. The Duo handles both displays as one unified space. The normal is landscape tablet orientation. When you pull up an app, let me just pull up I'll just pull up Edge. It automatically opens the app in split screen functionality. So now the app is portrait, but it's in a landscape orientation. It's, again, I think this is one of the things that so many reviews have glossed over and not properly kind of, it just gets weird. And look, there's a lag when you want to, rotate and go sideways. You need to have it, because if this thing is overreacting to just little twitches, that would be a miserable experience. But it leads to some weirdness. Like here, let me pull up Power Director. Power Director does not have a portrait view for video editing. But when you open it on a Duo, the Duo says you get half of a landscape orientation. So I open Power Director, and let me pull up my main sort of test project. And wouldn't you know it, now I've got the only version of using Power Director in portrait orientation is on the Surface. But if I close this, and let me go ahead and close this with the Power Director up, then it reports this is the bottom edge. You're going to turn that sideways, and that's how you use Power Director. It pulls the bottom edge out to the outside corner, which also helps maintain your UI elements docked to one side. This is very unfamiliar. It's not like any other phone, because I don't really think it's trying to be a phone. I feel like this is trying to be a pocket surface. And so Microsoft is making some assumptions for you on how these things should orient, should relate, and should work between these different usage scenarios. And you have to be able to keep all of that stuff straight. If you want full canvas, you want one app to span both screens, that's landscape view. If you want one app to automatically launch just to one screen, that's a portrait view, which is half of your landscape canvas. And then you fold the phone in half and you get a different orientation again for how that app should work. So there's no correct way to fix all of that. It's eventually just going to be the user familiarizes themselves with what apps and services currently work. And then Microsoft should be able to give us some kind of orientation control or lock. And that's the thing that I think is most lacking from the Duo in these early criticisms of this as an experiment. Oh, it's so dumb and it should be able to do this and it should just work. Anytime a tech reviewer starts bringing up Apple marketing slogans, it should just work. Why doesn't it just, it doesn't just work enough. The it just work-itness quotient is too low. and we should make sure it just works. You're not really contributing to the conversation. That's not what tech is. You need to be able to put all these pieces together. So my early experiences with Duo have been great. I very much enjoy what I'm already seeing. And this conversation doesn't stop with what does it feel to use like the day after the embargo lifts. The conversation on this will be, does Microsoft really live up to their commitment to support and improve on this as a platform? So this is step one. This is not something that we compare directly to phones that have already existed. This is where we move forward and we look at what this experience can do or bring to productivity and other phone designs. So from VR Peaceful One, how do portrait only apps look when spanned on the Duo? I actually have to get going, but let me see if I can pull up Power Director. I mean, like, I think that looks good. I think it looks great. Right? I'd edit video off of that. That's perfectly functional. And I love that the Power Director timeline lines just up off of the middle so that you don't lose your cursor when you're scrubbing your timeline. It's been great. It's not great for gaming because you often lose your crosshairs like on a first-person shooter, but it's good for a lot of other games like Tower Defense. I have a pretty good time with Tower Defense. So, folks, I got to call it. I got to bounce. So much tech happening in the world today. LG Wing was an exciting announcement. I'm going to come back next week. We're going to talk about Android 11 a little bit, and I'll have some more thoughts to share on that. We couldn't get to it this week, and I'll probably follow up with some more salt for the Duo and people that can't seem to understand that different things are different and that they can only understand the same thing that they've always had, but with just slightly more powerful specs, because that's not the gig. We can do better than that. And we can expand on a conversation of other usages and different modes. I'm already getting salty again. It's great. Everyone, thank you so much for dropping by, for tuning in, for sharing, for supporting, for being a part of these conversations and helping us expand the tech conversation. I want everyone out there to have an amazing week with their technology. I want you to be awesome with your tech. I want you to do awesome with your tech. And I'll catch you back here next week for another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. Be well. Take care. It's still crazy. I mean, we go from shelter in place to so many countries on fire. I hope you all stay safe. Come back next week. I want to see everyone back in the chat. So take care of each other. Take care of yourselves. I love you all. Be well.